everyone, and welcome to Inside Healthcare. It's hot and steamy outside. The cars are overheating. Even the highways are buckling, and everyone is at risk when the temperatures soar like this. Do you know the warning signs of heat exhaustion and what you can do to protect yourself and your family? Well, joining us with some answers, we're very pleased to have with us, we have Jeff Gross and Ryan Liebeck, and they are with the HealthEast Medical Transportation, which has the safest ambulance record in the United States, which is really amazing. And we're going to talk more about this amazing ambulance service in just a moment, but let's first talk about heat-related injuries. Jeff, what types of things do you see on the street when you're working?
Well, when it gets warm out like this, people typically push their body to the limits. You know, EMS is somewhat seasonal, so now that we've approached the summertime, people are a little more active. So we see a lot of different sporting-related injuries. You certainly have your water-related injuries, things of that nature. Americans haven't been known to be the most healthiest people. So, you know, when it gets warm like this, or just in the general summertime, you see people with a lot of different risk factors. They have heart attacks, a lot of dehydration. Typically, their ailments tend to come out in days like this. So we tend to stay pretty busy.
You know, and I think some people might think, well, it's just the elderly, but I've been covering Health Beat for a long time, and I know that we see a lot of young people that overdo it and don't take precautions and aren't smart about being out in the heat and stuff like that. So
yeah, a lot of people my age that think we're young again. Push our bodies to the limit.
So, Ryan, what would be some of those common symptoms that you might see that would say, you know, you're approaching heat exhaustion and you should get out of the sun?
You know, heat exhaustion kind of mimics common illnesses. So a lot of nausea, vomiting, some dizziness, just that dehydrated feeling. All of those are kind of symptoms. Probably the classic sign of dehydration is your urine color. Dark yellow urine means you're dehydrated. You need to drink more fluids. But just that nausea and vomiting feeling is probably the classic.
And
sweating.
It's something that with the fluids, it's not when you're just outside. You need to be drinking before you even go outside.
You really should be, because your body is constantly trying to regulate the temperature. You know, so sweating is the main process that it does that. And if you're not having enough water to begin with, then you're going to get dehydrated pretty quickly.
And I think I've heard that once you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. You're past that point, so you want to constantly
be playing catch up.
Fluids. What about like some of the sports drinks? Should you be doing those?
You know, those are good too. With sweating is also salt loss. So some of those sports drinks like Gatorade and Powerade, they have a sodium mixture in with the water, and that's really good for your metabolism too. It gives your body back the nutrients that it needs.
What would be some of those special heat stress risks that people might encounter?
Well, definitely caffeine or alcohol, people that have a lot of different tobacco use, things of that nature. People that are really at risk are those with high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, things of that nature.
So, and then would they recognize that things, I understand like sometimes if you've had a lot of alcohol, you may not even be aware that you're having some of these symptoms that we just talked about.
Typically not, because the body doesn't know how to respond to that when you're under the influence of alcohol, but really it's about being dehydrated and things of that nature.
So what would be some other things that they can do to protect themselves and their families to not get dehydrated, not to suffer heat exhaustion?
You know, the summertime is when we always take more pride in our lawns. We want to be outside mowing our lawns, trimming the trees. It's always good to do the buddy system, to have somebody else aware of what you're doing when you're spending time outside. Try to take frequent breaks, get into the cool shade area, lots of water. Ideally every 15 to 20 minutes, you should have some sort of water substance, whether it's the Powerade or just plain water. But just stay hydrated frequently and take frequent breaks.
And is there a certain time of the day that you're more likely to see some of these problems
typically
coming up?
If you're going to do some strenuous exercise or physical labor, you want to do it in the early morning hours or the late evening. Probably noon to 5, I'd say, is the hottest time of the day.
And it's not only just the temperatures, it's the humidity also too that can really wreak havoc.
It certainly can, and you have to really pay attention to the heat index, things of that nature. Because a lot of times you don't know that something's going to be wrong with you until it's too late. So you need to kind of prepare for that, like Ryan said, and kind of keep your eye on those things when you're outside working.
And I would think that would be especially good advice for people that are out working in it, like ambulance and paramedics and EMTs, as well as other people that might be working outdoors in this temperature and stuff.
You got to stay hydrated. Buy a water bottle and keep it with you.
So when do you know when it's an actual medical emergency and you need to be calling 911 and calling for you guys?
A lot of times it's just you don't feel right within yourself. You feel like something's wrong. You may get dizziness, a lot of excess sweating. Typically the skin tends to get cool at first because the skin's actually the biggest organ in the body, and that's what regulates the body's temperature. So it reacts in a way to kind of cool the inside of the body. So you start getting the cool, clammy skin. A lot of
when you go from hot to the clammy.
Yeah.
And what gets even worse is when you don't recognize it at those symptoms and you stop sweating and your skin becomes dry and hot. Then you're approaching into that heat stroke phase. You're going to have some neurological symptoms, such as seizures, loss of consciousness, just plain confusion could be a basic symptom of that.
Now, is there something, if you see this with a loved one or a friend, that they're exhibiting these type of things, that you can do while you're waiting for an ambulance to arrive?
Yeah, you want to try and pull them out of the elements, so if it's possible, bring them into a cool environment. If they have a lot of excess clothing on, take that off. Get some cold rags, maybe some ice packs, and just kind of try and cool the body slowly. I think the most important thing is that don't be afraid to call 911. That our job is to come out and just check you out.
I think some people are hesitant to do that, aren't they?
They are. A lot of people associate it with the big ambulance bill. But really, our job is to come out and just make sure that everyone's okay, and we'll do that for you, and we're prepared to. And we want you to call 911 so we can take care of you.
Especially with a heat stroke, that can be fatal.
It can be very fatal if left untreated.
So any other final advice with this heat? This is, obviously we're having a heat wave right now, but it's things that we're going to be seeing here in the weeks and months ahead here.
When you plan your day, plan your most vigorous activities in the morning or late at night when it cools down. Some of our senior citizens stay out of the sun and stay inside in a cool environment.
Use your air conditioner.
And I was thinking too, if they don't have an air conditioner and you do have a senior citizen, to kind of keep an eye on them too, to make sure that they're okay.
Yeah.
Oftentimes too, if you can get into an air conditioned environment for just a couple of times a day, YMCA or different senior centers and things like that, if you don't personally own air conditioning.
Yeah, I was remembering, like in Chicago a few years back when they had a number of seniors, a number of fatalities that people hadn't looked in on them and didn't.
A fan is not enough.
Nope.
It's going to be 100 today. A fan is just not enough.
So check in on your loved ones.
Yeah. So going back to the top of the program, we talked about the amazing ambulance service that you provide, and that you were involved in this amazing, amazing transportation of patients, very sick children, from one hospital to another. Can you kind of take us back to what happened, what was involved with that? And when we say you transported, what, 58 children? Some of them heart patients, cancer patients, 20 of them critical.
Yeah, it was truly an adventure, and we were asked to partner with the Fairview Hospital System, specifically Fairview U of M Hospital. We needed to move 58 of the most sickest kids, probably in the nation, to the new Amplatz Children's Hospital, which is attached to Riverside Hospital. These children are definitely some of the sickest kids around. And the specialty services that the Fairview Systems offer are pretty much the only place that these kids can go to get help for their ailments. Our staff did just an amazing job. A lot of these children they've never had to take that were as sick as they were. And they pulled it off flawlessly. They did a great, great job.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Some of these children were on heart machines.
Yeah, maybe kind of tell us about that. The machines went with them, but they couldn't be on the machine the whole transfer. I mean, what did you do?
We had to work closely with the intensive care unit doctors at Fairview and figure out a way to safely transport these kids. We had a couple that were on the Berlin heart machine, and basically what that does is that pumps the heart's blood for it.
And these are children that are waiting for
a heart transplant. Yep. We had to load the children in the machine into the ambulance. We disconnected the kids from the heart machine itself, so we had to hand pump their hearts to keep the blood flowing, and then hook them back up to the machine inside the ambulance. Continue the transport, and then do the same thing when we arrived at the Children's Hospital. It was amazing that the one young gal that I witnessed didn't miss a beat. So as we're disconnecting her from the heart machine, you know, it can be pretty stressful knowing that.
Goosebumps.
You know, we're keeping her alive right now by hand pumping, and she was just a sweetheart. Hola and hello, and just a big smile on her face. And although we were pretty stressed because obviously we didn't want anything to happen, the children, including her, didn't notice a difference at all.
Yeah, those that were well enough, they thought it was a joyride.
Yeah, well, you know, they were pretty scared at first, a lot of them, but the paramedics and the nurses that were involved were so empathetic in the compassion. They were able to turn, you know, what could have been considered a scary transfer for these kids into kind of a fun, enjoyable ride.
And Ryan, maybe you can kind of talk about that whole, it was carefully orchestrated. Every 5 minutes, another ambulance pulled in, pulled out. I mean,
we had the planning down really well. You know, kudos to Jeff for helping to put together this plan. But working with the nursing team at the Fairview hospitals, they're the ones that are the experts on the patients. So they know the severity of each of the patients. They were able to kind of group them and put them in a kind of a staggered order so that if we took a really critical patient, the next couple of them would be more stable patients, and then there would be another critical patient thrown in. So the whole event was just orchestrated from a lot of, you know, what do we need, where would we need it, what if this happens, how do we mitigate that? So everything was well planned out, as best you can plan for something like that.
And the weather wasn't as cooperative, though, this whole planning effort.
It wasn't a day like today, that's for sure. It was chilly and it was downpouring pretty much the entire time of the move. And go figure, as soon as we finished, it cleared up and the sun came out. So we had a lot of external things that we needed to prepare for. And our staff did just an amazing job of taking care of that. Was
there a moment for both of you where you just could step back and just go, wow, you know, this is incredible. I can't believe this is happening. And
I was kind of in commander mode the entire time, so not until the briefing afterwards did I kind of take a look at everything and was just kind of in awe. And I think it took me a couple of days to really fully understand what our staff accomplished.
Well, I think we were exhausted too.
Yeah,
a couple of days of no sleep.
I was up for over 24 hours straight, just making sure the final details were taken care of.
And you started before the sun, well, there was no sun that day, but before the sun actually came up, it was an all-day.
It was.
Night, starting with the night before.
Yeah, we had briefings that started pretty much the week before with our staff. So we had to really train them on the plan and how it was going to work, what their duties were, what their assignments were, the type of patients that they were going to be taking. The night before, we had a final briefing for all of our staff, and then we had to disinfect and clean all of our ambulances because these children, they were susceptible to anything. And that was a whole unique piece of this move also that we can talk about in a second. But we did not get much sleep that night, and our day actually started at about 3 o'clock in the morning, where we went to final briefings related to patient care with the pediatric intensive care unit teams, and just pretty much getting everything in position for the start of the move at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I have to confess, I slept in. I got there about 5, so we could videotape this whole procedure. What about some of the moments that will stick with you from that day?
You know, there's a couple of them. I remember the night before when Jeff mentioned the cleaning of the ambulances, watching our team come together and just, you know, t-shirts and jeans, just scrubbing all of these ambulances and equipment. Not even breaking, you know, we had several dinner breaks and stuff like that, but people were just kept going. They knew they had a mission, and they just kept going. So that was really nice to see all the staff just come together for a common mission. And then, you know, the day of the move, as Jeff mentioned earlier, there was several kids that initially were kind of scared, and then as I'm watching them pass my desk, where I was in a kind of a command role, I'd see the patients wheeling by me, and one was just waving, holding a teddy bear, just smiling and saying hi to everybody,
they just had to warm
having
your
a
heart.
lot of fun. It was a good experience to witness.
Yeah. I mean, you deal with sick children all the time, but not to this magnitude and this massive numbers, and then constantly, you know, like I said, every 5 minutes they would take that 10-minute drive.
Yeah, and it was actually
from one hospital
less
to the
than every
other.
5 minutes. You know, we were loading 2 to 3 ambulances at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about the sickness of these children, these aren't normal kids that come in with a tummy aches or things of that nature. These are kids that have chronic ailments that could possibly end their life. There's a reason why they're at the Ambulance Children's Hospital, is because they're it's a world-renowned hospital, and they have the best specialists around to take care of them. So when we talk about kids that were maybe a little bit more stable, these are the children that you can move out of their room. Maybe those that, you know, have cancer, that are in chemotherapy, things of that nature. We talk about the more critically ill patients with the higher acuity levels. These are the children that when you move them out of their environment, it could possibly really harm them. And we're really proud to say that not one child was affected negatively because of the patient move.
Wow.
And a lot
Marrow
of
transplant patients.
Yeah. A lot of these patients, there's what I like to call a game time decision to move them up until, you know, a few minutes beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one child who you weren't able to move that day because of that, right?
You're right, and I think it was a great decision not to move that child. On Monday morning following, we got the phone call to finish the patient move, and we moved that child successfully.
One of the things I hadn't heard about before was that some of the smaller ones were in, what were they called, a baby hug or something?
Baby pod.
Baby pod.
Yep,
What
infant
were
transport
those
system.
exactly?
It kind of looks like a bobsled.
It does.
It's a
Good analogy.
miniature isolette that secures the child inside. It can transport children that are less than 20 pounds. And these are children that, typically that are transporting them that are on ventilators, that have multiple IV lines, heart monitors. And what it is an enclosed transport system, but still allows you to be able to treat the patient by opening up little doors and doing the things that you need to
So they're
sustain
still
life.
hooked up to all of that equipment,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all protective, like in this little,
It's kind of like a mini isolate.
yeah.
There's a kind of a soft padding around the patient, it's kind of a sand material, and you take an air pump and you suck all the air out, and it hardens it, so it just kind of secures them in place.
Do you remember how many of the children had to be moved that way?
I think there was 4 of them.
And those were, is it up to a certain age then?
It's weight.
Oh, okay.
Weight and length of the...
And I think you had a couple of children that had very rare sort of a skin.
And it's hard to
Condition.
pronounce. We call it
Patients.
EB. Yep. And these are the kids where basically the top layer of the skin does not adhere to the second layer. So even touching them like this will slough their skin off and turn it into blisters that become very infectious and cause them to get septic. So we had 2 of those patients, and we really let the parents and family take the lead on that. They're used to moving these children.
Yeah.
And everything went well. Nothing happened during the transport, and it was a good experience for them. But, you know, scary for us as caregivers because we don't want to do any harm to those
Yeah, that
children.
would be the
and,
last thing
you know,
that you would want
Used to
do.
caring for people and being told if you touch somebody that could hurt them. Really.
So you were saying that nothing like this has ever been undertaken, at least in the Twin Cities and maybe nationwide as well.
Correct, and there's been a lot of obviously hospital moves throughout the nation, and even in the state of Minnesota itself. I mean, HealthEast has had one many years ago.
Well, I just heard in the news too, down with the tornadoes down in Missouri, the one hospital was hit, and they had to move those patients out then too.
What was unique about this move was really how sick these children were. You just don't move kids that are that sick like that all the time, if at all. So as far as I know, nothing like this has really ever been done before. It was well planned, and thank goodness that we had time to do that. It wasn't an emergency where, like in Texas, where they had to move them out right away. So, you know, we had time to prepare, and we did a good job planning, and definitely was really, really successful.
Now, you said you were in that operations mode the whole time, but at some point, did your emotions get to you about the whole thing?
You know, it did when the president of Ambulance Children's Hospital kind of addressed all of us afterwards. And just this, it's hard to explain. We had to take an applause for our staff. You know, they're the true unsung heroes.
And there
I
were,
didn't
what,
do anything.
83 men and
Correct.
women?
Yes.
Correct. It took 83 total staff members. We had 3 separate operations going on at one time.
And how many ambulances?
11 ambulances, 18 stretchers.
Wow.
So if you really think about it, it was just a constant flow of patients. We had pre-staged equipment up on the floors, the 4 different units. So there were stretchers, medication pumps, things of that nature. As one patient was getting loaded in the ambulance, others are getting moved onto the bed. with our staff. So it was a constant flow of patients based upon, you know, when the availability were of the critical care trucks and what the resources looked like. So once we moved the patients, then they got over to the new hospital, and that was a whole other operation itself, where the patient had to be unloaded, brought up to the stairs, up to the floors. Patient report had to be given, and while that's going on, all the ambulances had to be completely disinfected, and the equipment. And so the turnaround was really quick. The staff had 10 minutes from when the ambulance got to the destination to get the patient up to the floor and delivered, and then back down in the ambulance to return to what we call the origins, the Fairview U of M Hospital.
And some of that disinfecting was happening within that ambulance bay area at the new hospital, but then there was also a tent outside. Yeah. What was that for then?
Well, that was where we staged the ambulances initially, before all the rain came, to do that cleaning of the equipment in the ambulances. The unique thing too is that the ER at the ambulance hospital was actually open too. So there was only 2 garage bays, and we had other ambulance services coming in, dropping off patients. So a lot of that had to be coordinated. There was limited space, but they were able to really turn these vehicles around and get the patients transferred in just an admirable amount of time.
What was it like for you to be involved with all of this?
Oh, it was just a fantastic experience. I mean, you know, we take care of patients every day, but to take care of this number of patients and these sick patients all at once, I don't know if you'll ever get an opportunity to experience this again.
Yeah, I mean, you have mock disaster type things, but
to participate in the real thing, you know.
Yeah, it was just a great opportunity. I feel really blessed to be a part of it. I hope that the heroes, the paramedics and EMTs and the nurses and the RTs and the docs that really did the patient care, I hope that they understand really what they just did and how they've impacted their lives of the children. It was just amazing. I tip my hat to them definitely for how great they are at what they do every single day. Yeah. You know, for me, I mean, I helped plan it, and I know that we had a great plan, but it was really, I felt good going into it. I knew that our staff would be able to do this. And they didn't have the complete and total knowledge of the entire move until they got their briefing. So they got a job assignment, they were told what they needed to do, and they absolutely did it very well.
Yep.
Something that you may never experience again in your career?
It's highly unlikely. But you know, I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Definitely, it'll clearly be a pinnacle point of my career. I'm sure yours too.
Oh yeah.
You don't hear too many thank yous or things of that nature when you're in public safety. But just to see the smiles on the faces of the kids and to know that everyone got there safe and not a beat was missed is really what it's all about. And that's what you look for.
Not just another day at the office, huh?
Yeah, it was a unique day. But
as Jeff mentioned earlier, this was a new partnership between HealthEast and Fairview too that started February 1st. So
yeah, people might be wondering why HealthEast ambulances were moving children for University and Fairview system.
Yeah, we have a contract that we worked out with the Fairview healthcare system back in February, and this patient move was part of that contract. We had minimal time to prepare. We actually had to hire, what was it, about 40 people?
You know, yeah, about 40 people we onboarded.
In 2 months, we had to invest in a lot of different assets because the volume of this contract was just substantial, and it really grew our company by over 1/3 in itself. Wow. So on top of starting this entire new contract, we had this entire patient move we had to deal with too. So
it's just a great boost of confidence for our new partners to see HealthEast Ambulance be able to pull off such a huge undertaking. That should set us in stone for a good time. Yeah,
it was just amazing. I think it really shows who HealthEast is and who HealthEast Care System is. These are the leaders of healthcare, I believe.
Yeah, we had mentioned at the top too that you have the best ambulance record in the country. Safety record?
We do, for the road safety program. And you can go ahead and talk about that if you'd like.
Well, the road safety program, it's a kind of a black box technology. Mounted in every one of our ambulances is a driver monitoring system. It measures the G-forces applied to a vehicle. So you're starting and you're stopping, your turning radius, how sharp you turn it. It monitors that and awards a point system to the driver. So the driver is going to get some feedback. He's going to hear some clicking and growling, letting him know that he's approaching the limits that he should be at for a safe ride.
Wow.
And if he exceeds that, he's going to get a loud tone in his ear. Well, that tone also records a score. So we like to say that we have what's called an ABC mile, which is the average miles between counts, or those tones. The industry standard right now of all the companies that use this road safety device is 59 miles. HealthEast just last month did 249 miles.
Wow, that is
Between
amazing.
It's amazing. We have over half of our staff are what we consider level 10 or perfect drivers. They drive over 2,000 miles a month, some of them, and they don't get any tones.
Wow.
So yeah, and
It's the kind of thing you need for teenage drivers, huh?
they actually offer that.
Yeah. Well, I think we're about out of time, but this has just been fascinating. Thank you both for taking time out
Thank
to
you for having
us. Thank you.
talk about tips for the heat and then also about this amazing move that you were all involved with. So thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
Really appreciate it. And also, I should tell our viewers that you'll get to watch some of this behind-the-scenes thing next month, so we hope you can join us then. You won't want to miss it. So thanks again, Jeff Gross and Ryan Liebeck. Thank you. And we'd like to thank you for joining us. We hope you'll join us next time on Inside Healthcare. We'll see you then.
Inside Healthcare. For more information, visit stjohnshospital-mn.org or call 651-326-7800.